Welcome to Crafting a Meaningful Life. First of all, I'm alone. I don't have a guest. I'm Mary Crafts, and it's just you and me today. Next of all, of the over 260 episodes that I've done, can I just say I've never come dressed like this? I've never worn a ball cap. I probably have worn a t-shirt before, but I'm here with something very different today. I think, a good podcast ready for you with me, and so I'm going to talk about a deeply moving experience that I had and the lessons for you and me to take from that. But in the meantime, I want to talk about this. Okay, so I've had people ask me, Mira, are you ever going to run retreats or seminars or symposiums or anything that we can come and be a part of, like for a weekend or anything like that? And I'm like, let me think, am I ever going to do that? Well, maybe. I'm just not called to it right now. And so, but what am I called to, and what do I spend a ton of time on? And what could you join me with? So I have this one coming up, and I want to talk to you about it. This one is a Child's Hope Foundation. It's an organization I've worked with for quite a while, and I know the founders very well and the people who work in this organization. And they have organizations around the world where they deal with orphanages. And this one is in Baja, just across the border in California, and I'm going. John and I are going June 20th, 2023 through June 24th, 2023. And I would invite any of you to come with me. Just think about this. It's $420 and you get all your lodging and all your meals, all your transportation from San Diego into Baja and back. You just need to get yourself to San Diego. And we would have the time on the bus. We would have the time every day together. And I'm going down there. What we do in Baja is first in the morning, we're constructing. Now, you know me, I'm not a contractor, okay, right? But there's always something that I can do, whether it's, putting spackling here or laying mortar or whatever it is. There's always something that I can do. And I love being there and constructing these schools and homes and kitchen facilities where they take care of these orphans. I know in the United States, it's kind of an odd thing to think about. Thousands of orphans. And where is the orphanage here in Salt Lake City? Well, we don't really have one like that. We have a foster care system, but even so, it's not like this kind of orphanage system we find in so many countries around the world. So how do we take care of these children? How do we keep them from being trafficked on the street? How do we protect these children? The best way is to bring them together in these orphanages. So that's the morning we're put on our contractor's hat and do that part. In the afternoon, and trust me, I'm 69, so if I can do this, you can do this. In the afternoon, we actually play and do things and teach with the children and get to interact with them. And then we have the evenings on our own. And so I read books with them. I talk to them, small children, about teaching them about puzzles and what that's like and put that together. And sometimes I sing songs with them. I love to sing. I love to get children to sing. Sometimes I dance with them, but play on the playground, whatever it is that they would like to do. And they get an interaction with someone who smiles a lot. That's me. And that I love to interact with them and play with them, and they will touch your heart like no other experience. And you can come by yourself, come with your spouse, and the great part is you can also come with your family. What a better way to bring your small children. I think the youngest age is 7 that they allow you to bring with you, and teenagers and my grandchildren. So my grandchildren are coming, 4 of them. And I would love to invite you to come with me. And you can find out more information by contacting me or going to achf.org. It's the acronym. of this, a Child's Hope Foundation.org. And there's all the information that you need, or you can reach out to me directly. You can always reach me on my website and send me an email at Mary Crafts Inc., INC, not INK. I'm not an ink artist. INC as incorporated.com. And there's also a Mary Crafts who has a clothing store and she spells her name just like me. She has an online store out of Florida. And I hope to shout, she took that website domain a month before I was ready to take mine. So don't go to the clothing store. Come to Mary Crafts Inc. and send me an email, and I'll be happy to share information with you. And I would love to share this trip with you, to have time to spend with you and bond with you and just get to know you and you get to know me. So think about that. And now on to today's podcast. Life has come full circle for me in many ways as I look about where I started my life and then where I went, and then coming back around this direction full of light and knowledge and information and a change of heart and love. And I think that that's what probably eternity looks like, is this coming full circle and then having learned so much and then moving on this direction. I don't see it as this flat linear line like I'm here, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. And for me, it's much more three-dimensional than that. And I gained through this last experience that I had such clarity on what struggle is. And we use that word like, ugh, it's a struggle, you know. But I think it's quite different. And I want to share with you an experience I had because I think it had such profound value for me and those who were there. And I hope that it does for you. I was asked to speak at a gathering of women by my good friend, Puli Lin. And whenever Puli asks something of me, I just go. I don't even ask what it is or what it's about. I just go because she has such, I'm not kidding you, one of the most pure, unadulterated hearts that I've ever met in my life. And so if she needs me, I show up. And she'd give me the date and the time. I was going to show up. That night, I got in my car to go. And this event had already started, I think, about 6 that evening, and I was supposed to come at 7:30. The moment I got in my car and started driving, I just began to feel this warmth in my heart, this yearning to be where I was going. I was like, what's that about? Why am I feel like I'm already there, even though I'm here? And it's about a 20-minute drive. And my mind was just like running with, who are these people I'm speaking to? And why am I so drawn to be there? I didn't understand it, but I arrived, gathered my things, went inside. And when I arrived, first, Puli has a very unique boutique out in front. And there were people in the boutique. And then in the back, she has a large gathering room. And there were people getting their hair done, people getting manicures and nails painted, people getting their makeup done. I was like, okay, what's happening here? I don't know what this is here. You know, was I supposed to come without my makeup and then you're going to do it for me? And I walked in, Puli saw me, she came over and she was so happy to see me. And I said, well, tell me about what's going on here tonight. And she said, these are the women from the domestic violence shelter. And we have brought them here tonight to give them a gift of this evening, to help them see the beauty of themselves and to lift their thoughts off what they're dealing with. And they can come and choose a new outfit in my boutique, and then they get their hair done, their makeup done, a manicure. And she said, you're the closing piece. I'd like you to speak to these women and be what you send home with them. And Puli knows I don't mind speaking like this. In fact, I actually love it when I just show up and speak from my heart of whatever she's asked me to talk about. Immediately, the tears started streaming down my face. And I knew why I had felt into these women before I ever arrived. I knew why their energy was reaching out to me and pulling me there. And I learned from that the value of listening to my heart. When my heart is trying to tell me something, I'm trying to describe how it is for me. I feel like my heart is like bigger than what it's ever been, bigger than my chest that it's inside of. And there's this draw. I can feel actually my physical body kind of moving just a little bit, being drawn into something. And my mind opening up to allowing the Spirit to speak through me rather than just my words. And that's how I can walk into a situation with 50 people in a room and never think twice about what I'm going to say. But I was totally overwhelmed by the opportunity I had to be there. And in just a minute, you're going to understand why. So they gathered everyone around. I had gone around and introduced myself to a few people, and they sat down, and I looked out into this audience. There were about 25 of them from the actual shelter, and about 25 of them who had come simply to be of service. And they were the people who were helping people choose clothes and listening to them and just sitting and talking. And they were the people who were doing the makeup, the hair, the manicures, all sorts of things. And so that was kind of the makeup of this group in this room. And I walked into the front of this, out into the front of the room. And the first thing I started with was what I started today. Life has come full circle for me. I walked in your shoes not so long ago. And I started with vulnerability because I wanted them to see and recognize me as them and them as me. That's this great concept of oneness that I talk about so much, that there is no difference between us. I didn't have to give them a scenario of my life and who I was and what I'd accomplished and, the goals I've attained and the podcast that I give, that I've written a book. I didn't have to say any of those things. The confidence that I carry with me is always evident to those I encounter. So I don't have to lead with that. I get to lead with love. And there's that sense that immediately when you're leading with love, that you are trusted. And they opened their hearts and they knew that the things I would share with them tonight were truth. And just from my presence, they did that and were ready for me. I started with asking them 2 questions because I wanted them to feel that they were seen. And I wanted them to see that they were no different than we are. That there's not an us and a them. It's not a they and an us. The people that came from the shelter and the people that came from to serve them. That there was no difference. And so I asked them 2 questions, and I asked everyone in the room to answer these 2 questions. And the first question was, what were you feeling before you arrived? And the second question was, what are you feeling now? And we went around the room, and the people that were from the shelter were kind of interspersed in amongst the people that were there to offer their services. And it was interesting that the response to those 2 questions was the same. Didn't matter where they came from. They were the same. The people who were from the shelter oftentimes said things like, I was a little nervous. I didn't know who was going to be there or how I would be accepted. I didn't know exactly what services would be offered. I didn't know if I'd have to share my story. I didn't know if I'd have to talk with people or if I could just sit there and receive whatever they had. And the people that came to serve said exactly the same thing. I was a little nervous about coming tonight. I had never worked with these people before, and were they just going to be so distraught and crying and upset that I wouldn't know how to deal with it? Were they going to like me? Were they going to listen to me? Were they going to accept my services to them? The doubts and the fears on both sides were same. What a wonderful realization to come to, that we are one here. And the second question was answered almost identically. In fact, they were identical, which were, I'm much more comfortable now. I see that these women are just like me. And I'm so full of gratitude, either for being able to receive or being able to give, because giving and receiving happened on both sides that night. And there was this sense of oneness and unity in the group. They were no longer us and them. They are we. I loved that piece, and that they could actually put that into words and to hear this from themselves and others, how that we are not any different. And they began to see that they were not invisible. So many times it doesn't matter what our circumstances are, whether we're in a shelter because we were being terribly abused at our home, or whether we're just walking through a regular life, we wonder the same thing. Are we invisible? Does anybody see me? Does anybody know what I'm going through? Same. So this concept of oneness for me continues to come up in front of me. And I know without a shadow of a doubt that is how we are solving all the problems in our world. All of them. Every one of them. It's how we're going to solve sex trafficking. It's how we're going to solve world poverty. It's how we're going to end wars. Is by coming to the concept of that we are one. And there's no difference between us in our souls and in our hearts. And what I established here with them was this concept of trust. When you're in the situation in a domestic violence shelter, trust is gone. For the most part, you have lost trust in what you had believed in and hoped in. And no matter to your best ability, you were being punished as they see it. And what was there to hope in? So that's the piece I gave them as I established who I was and how I was here and how I was showing up, to how they were here, how they were showing up, and what they've learned. And then I told them that some 38 years ago, as I was working as a social worker, had just graduated from college, was working for the Division of Family Services, that myself and another woman opened the very first domestic violence shelter in Utah County. It was something we knew that we had to establish. Back then we called it the Women's Abuse Center. Since, of course, they've changed that to lighten the load just a bit, and you're experiencing domestic violence, and violence is something that you can get out of. Abuse, sometimes we feel it's what we deserve. And when we established this, we did it in the basement in a single bedroom of a nursing home, because that's where we could find it cheap. We got an old iron bed donated, one little crib, and that was about it. I began to gather things from anyone that would donate: toys, blankets, pacifiers, bottles, clothing, towels, toiletries, and there it was in its meager self. As I worked with these women, way, almost 40 years ago, and they would choose to go back to their husband. I wanted to stamp my feet and yell to the top of my voice, "What are you thinking? What do you mean you're going back?" It seemed so black and white to me. Okay, he beat you, you leave. I never understood it the whole time I'm working there, that there are so many shades of gray, and there's so much more to this problem of domestic violence. It's not black and white. It's not black and white. Because the women who are often subject themselves to domestic violence feel that's what they deserve, feel that they are not enough, and this is better than nothing. This is better than being alone. And little did I know when I was screaming, "It's black and white," that just 8 years later, I would be there. Now, in those 8 years, they had found a new facility that was much larger, had much more, had a little kitchen in it and different things, and there was room for several families. But when I walked in that night, after the police had taken me there, with my 2 small boys, I didn't know at that point where I was going to end up. I didn't know that this is who I was going to be. But the one thing I always had was hope. I could dream it. And if I could dream it, I could make it happen. And as those women sat there with their jaws dropped, "You were where we are?" This sense of oneness came fulfilled. Yes, I've walked in your shoes. And of course, their question is screaming through their mind, "Well, how did you get out?" And that's a very lengthy discussion. But I did leave them with these thoughts, and they're the profound thoughts that I want to leave with you today, and it's the reason I'm telling this story. The first thing I asked them was, by a show of hands, I want you to actually raise your hand here. How many of you are struggling? And every single woman there raised her hand. Both those who had come to serve and those who were in the shelter. Everyone felt that they were struggling. And then I asked them this: how many of you equate struggle to failure? And not to my surprise, but to their surprise, every single person raised their hand. As I began to nod my head, I said, every one of you are struggling. I struggle. I still struggle. But the difference is I no longer equate it to failure. In fact, I equate it to my journey and my success. And that's how I got out. I didn't see I was failure. I began to see I was on my path. I want you to think about it in your own life. Are you struggling? Are you struggling with anything? Do you think that you're a failure now because you're struggling? You know how old I am. I don't have to say it again. I still struggle. But I can tell you this. At this age, I am so glad I no longer see it as that I'm a failure. That I see it as my gift, my path, my journey to being even more than I know that I am right now. Now, not more than I already am, but more than I know that I am. Yeah. Because when you equate those, you have struggle and you equate it to failure. And then you feel lost and you don't know where to go. And then that leads to doubt. Will I ever get out of here? Am I really worth anything? Will I ever be enough? And that leads to depression, clinical depression, that sometimes you can't get out of. and this overwhelming sense of sadness about your life. That there's just a sadness every morning when you wake up. Sadness. What if you changed just one process in that length of emotions and thought process? Start with that you struggle, that we all struggle, but you change the first reaction as opposed to that I'm a failure to I'm growing. Because I'm struggling, I'm growing. It's no different than when I work out in the gym. I struggle to lift those weights every time, but I know that I am growing a healthy body and a stronger muscle mass. It's the same in life. Struggle equates to growth. And if I'm growing, that means I'm learning. I'm learning more about me and about life. And when I'm learning again and again and again, I'm developing one of the most valuable traits that I'll ever have in this life, which is resilience. That I can struggle, but I can come back because I have resilience. My rubber band is becoming stronger and stronger. When it's a thin rubber band, sometimes it breaks. But if I stretch it and come back and do it again, that little rubber band becomes one of those bungee cords that, you just cannot grate. You can pull an elephant with it. And that's resilience. And when you build resilience, the confidence inside of you builds. And you come to understand. So struggle leads all the way to this understanding life and how you're growing in it. And when you finally come to an understanding of struggle, you can see your value as a person. I want you to see your value. Just because I'm still struggling does not mean that I'm a failure. Because I'm in the middle of still struggling, my value, I'm seeing more clearly. My strength, I'm seeing more clearly. My resilience, I'm learning so much. Sometimes I will just ask a question. Like I asked a question to John the other day. Do you deserve something or do you earn something? And we had this 2-hour discussion about that. I said, so what is a gift? Is nothing in life a gift? Do you have to earn everything? We had this 2-hour discussion. And because I was really feeling into trying to understand this and to be taught by my spiritual guides in the universe and listening to John and what he had to think and how he was raised, I understood so much more. And I was struggling with a question, and I went through all these processes, and because of it, I could see my value more clearly. Sometimes I earn things, and sometimes I deserve things just because I am, and some things are given to me as a gift. Other times I learned the value of work, and I worked hard, and it's both. Some things are gifts, and some things we earn. But either way, we deserve them all. So just by changing how you see your struggles can change your entire life. Huh? Are you excited about that? It's a small shift in the brain. The struggle is the gift. And I want you to ponder the lessons of this. And I want you to claim them. And I now want you to commit today to see struggle as your opportunity for growth. Can you do that for me? Can you commit this to yourself today, that struggle is your opportunity for growth? Now, this process of struggling, becoming growth and learning and understanding and seeing your value, all of that is possible under one circumstance, and that's in the presence of vulnerability. If you're not vulnerable, this is not going to happen. and you're going to continue to see your struggles as your failures. That's one of the gifts I gave those women that night. I gave them a gift of my vulnerability. I didn't walk in there and tell them all about who I was and what I'd accomplished, and don't you think I'm fabulous? But I walked in there and told them where I'd been. I didn't need to tell them about where I'd become. That was evident through my love for them. And so I want you to ask yourself, this is where I am today, right here. And then as a victim, don't say that as a victim. This is where I am today. I'm in the middle of struggle. Oh! Think through it like this, not as a victim, as taking accountability for where you are. This is where I am today. Yep. I'm accountable. I'm accountable. And then the next one is, and this is where I am going. I don't want you to say, this is where I could go, this is where I should go, which is the worst thing to say. I've tried to eliminate the word should from my vocabulary entirely. And if I say that, I always stop and think, is this something I should do? Or is this something I could do? Is this something I want to do? Not should. Should's not a good word. So this is where I am going. Can you just think that for a minute? I want you to stop, close your eyes while I'm talking, and think, where am I going? Where am I going? Can you see it out there? Can you see the process? Can you see that woman or that man? I just have a lot more women listeners, but I don't want to forget you lovely, beautiful men who fill my life with joy. So ponder. Ponder for yourself. Find out where you are now and where you want to go. You have to spend time on this. It doesn't just come easy, growth. Struggle doesn't just come easy. But in struggle, it's best to have a vision of where you're going and how these struggles are a piece that are going to get you there. Don't see it as a failure, because that results in stuckness. Is that a word? No, I made it up. Stuckness. Now I want you to commit. Once you see where you're going to go and where you want to go, now comes the commitment part. And commitment is more important than what you're thinking this moment, because commitment has the power to carry you through into the future. When you absolutely commit, it has the power to change your life. When you commit to something, it has the power to change your life into that of value and growth and understanding and learning. And you only make a commitment when you can add onto it afterwards, no matter what. Can you add that on? No matter what, I'm making this commitment to see my struggles as my process of growth, no matter what. And that's the power of intention. You envision it. You envision where you're going and who you are. I used to role play mine a lot. I would get up in the morning, I'd look in the mirror, I'd think about what's ahead of me in the day, and I would like role play it in my mind. See myself being dressed to the nines, being confident, striding into a location, and just be committed to being all that I am. Not as a woman of struggle and failure, but a woman of struggle and growth, and envision it and commit to it. Well, how do you commit? No matter what. But the first step to commit, before you can really make that no matter what, is that you need to be vulnerable to yourself, not to everyone else. It's not a matter of going out and sometimes people think vulnerability, oh, Mary said I should be vulnerable, so I need to tell everything about my life to everyone I see, That's victimness. That is being a victim when you have to tell all the sadness to everyone. But there's a difference between sharing all your sadness and sharing just who you are and where you are in life and your struggle and what you're working through. The way you talk about it is different. When I hear someone talk to me in victim, I can hear it that quick. And I'm not so interested in what they have to say. Or I'm very interested in them and I'll call them on it immediately. They'll be taken back because they just expected to have just accepting and love from me. That's not love. I called them on it. Said, and what piece of that did you play? And some people want to carry on the conversation. They see the value of it. They start the aha thing. And other people are like, what are you talking about? Didn't you hear what I just said? Yeah, I did. But it's when you're going to not hide anymore to yourself and to others. If you continue to hide to yourself, how can you possibly grow out of your struggles? You can't. If you want to start healing today, you've heard me say this so many times, what? If you want to start healing today, what? You will stop hiding today. Stop hiding your struggles. You will share them. You'll be open about them. But you'll tell them from the point of accountability. That's how you get growth. Struggle with accountability and vulnerability. I want to give you grace. Grace is one of my founding principles, that I want to give grace to myself and others. That every day is not straight up, oh, I'm moving past those struggles. Just not the way that it is. If you're listening to this podcast, you know my journey. You know that I am always like 2 steps forward, half a step back, 2 steps forward, 1.5 back. It's the direction of the climb, not the speed of the climb. And tomorrow you may stumble. But what I want you to do when you are in the middle of struggle is to stand up on just a little footstool. I have a little footstool in my house here, and it's about 18 inches. It helps me with so many things in this house. I just need 18 more inches to reach the top shelves of my cupboards. It's awesome. And just visually, not even you have to have a footstool, but virtually in your mind, that you stand up just long enough to look and to see it. That woman that you truly are, that woman that you're becoming. And then the struggles seem a little bit easier when you take a moment to remember and see the vision. And then when you look down that road, you can start again and be confident that this is your growth. This time you may get 9 days in a row before you feel that, heavy struggle feeling again. Get on the little stool again and look down again. And then you see it and you continue to see it in front of you, of where you're going and who you are. What was it? Struggle, growth, learning, understanding, seeing your value, experiencing your value. Yes. So this is my last little piece for you today. And this is, this week, my current struggle. And I've come a long ways this week. I was listening to a podcast by Oprah Winfrey. And I love Oprah and her way she thinks and insights. We're about the same age. We've struggled, both of us, with weight. She ponders and thinks of things deeply. She tries to surround herself with people who are on the same journey. I really like Oprah. Anyway, in this podcast, she made a statement, and she said, what a journey it was for me, and such a struggle to learn to love myself. I stopped and thought for just a moment, and I said, it has been a journey, and now I can say, I do love myself. And I can embrace myself and just be so happy with this life and who I truly am. Then she went on to say, and I've learned to love the person who used to be. I thought for just a minute. Oh, no, wait a minute. No, I don't love that person. I love this person. And I envisioned in my mind that person at 284 pounds and in the relationship of constant verbal, emotional, spiritual, physical abuse. And I'm like, oh no, yeah. That's why we did all this, so we could get away from that. I didn't love that. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? And the podcast is over. I sat down in my chair in my bedroom and just sat there. And I began to think and envision in my mind that woman, me, struggling so much every single day, trying to support my family, getting by on 4 hours of sleep for 20 years. I thought, how can I learn to love her? And as I sat there, once again, I put my arms around me and envisioned me that way, and envisioned that woman who actually still lives inside of me. She is me, and I am her, and I want to embrace her and love her. This is how you can embrace the imperfect person that you are still. And if you're still in the middle of some of your biggest struggles, how you can learn to love yourself as you are right now. And this is what came to me. I began to see her, and tears came down my face because I know she was in pain. And I said out loud, Mary, I'm so grateful for you. Mary, thank you. Thank you for having the strength to stay strong. Thank you for enduring all those things so that you got to emerge this person. Thank you for being loving even in the midst of that. Thank you through all your struggles that you did not let them become your failure. I see you, and I love you, and I'm grateful for you just the way you are. You have always been enough. And as I talked to myself and the tears came, I realized that I, for the first time in my life, loved all of me and all of my journey. I've always been grateful for my struggles, but somehow to love that woman had eluded me till that moment. That's what I want to leave with you today. All these things are possible, are within your reach, not your grasp, within your reach as you craft your meaningful life. Namaste.
Listen to the full podcast today and subscribe on iTunes,